Hi, and welcome to episode 20 of my free Java video course. My name is Markus Biel. In this episode, I'm going to talk about the Tostring method, which you can see here in the Oracle Java SE 8 API of the class object. So this episode continues my description of the class object and its methods. So today we will mainly talk about the string. Shortly, I will also tell you some things about the getClass method. And well, while we're already here, I might as well tell you a few things about all these methods actually, because this will be rather short. The reason is all these methods here related to notify and wait, they have to do with multi-threaded programming. And about this, I would do a dedicated episode. Multi-threaded programming means you program in a way that it can run on multiple processes at once, which is really a cool thing and is natively supported by Java. But yeah, so we will go in detail on these methods when I talk about multi-threading. Now in short, so the idea is in multi-threading you can split up a task in several subtasks, and then it can happen that you need to synchronize, because imagine you would have several people cleaning up your kitchen, so you would need some mechanism that not two people do the same work. Exactly the same exists in Java. So you have these wait methods here with the timeout parameters. The only difference is that it won't wait forever, but time out after a given timeout period. But the idea is that someone is waiting for someone else to finish a task. And this notify and notify all, the idea is someone is notifying someone that a certain task is finished. So actually wait and notify, they operate together. Okay, and maybe I can also shortly tell you, prefer using notify all instead of notify, and prefer using wait with a timeout. Okay, but that's it for now. As said, I will give you more details at a later time. Okay, so today we will now continue talking about toString, and then also shortly I'll show you getClass, because this is really not so interesting for us at the moment. GetClass, as said here, returns the runtime class of the object that you call it on, because of course you have a reference variable referencing an object, and the reference variable can be of one class or interface, but the object could be of another one. Like you can have a reference variable of type car, and then this could reference an object of type BMW, right? So when you on such a variable that references a BMW would call getClass, it would return you the BMW and not car. Well, as you see, there's also this weird stuff here, which we'll also not talk for now. The only thing that matters to us now is on the getClass, you can again call other methods, which will give us the name of the class as a string. And this we can actually use in our toString method. This for a beginner should be everything important about the getClass method. Okay, and toString. On high level, what does toString do? I think the name already pretty much describes what it does. The idea of the toString method is to return you a string representing the object. So that means a BMW should print somehow that it is a BMW, and then maybe, like in my example last time, I had an owner, which was me, so maybe it should print out BMW, owner is Markus Biel, and so on. Yeah. So that's the idea of the Tostring method. And now, enough of talking, I'll already jump into my code and we'll have a look at this and we'll code. Okay, so again I've prepared a little test. And I've created already a BMW. It's still the same constructor like from the last episode, so that we have a bit that we can print out. Okay, here, so that you also get used to other styles, I created the object in line with just one line. Now it's questionable, is that good style or not? Is it readable or not? Well, in my case, I didn't care too much about readability. I just wanted to have it fast because I don't want to tell you about constructors today, but about the Tostring method. So it is always important that you write code in a way that is readable. So, well, I think here it's still okay because you can see new name, Markus Biel, new color, silver. So this is still kind of readable, but you know, I can't give you the silver bullet, the rule that always applies. I just want you to think before you code and to not always have the general rule that you would apply, but look at things and then actively decide, is that readable for me? Is it not? And then really design your code so that it is good fitting for you, because this is also a bit of a personal style. So I don't want you to copy my style. After a while you will have your style, and I want you to actively think your decisions through so that you really make your own decision, and you shouldn't code something because this is how everyone else does it. Okay. Enough of blah blah. Let's actually start now with showing you the Tostring method. So first of all, the Tostring method is a method from object. And this one is the first one I can show you, which is already public. So we can use it as it is right from the start. I can say BMW Tostring, and this is going to work. The question is, what is it going to print? So let's just have a look on it. System.out.println. I always use println, which gives me a new line. But you could also go for print here. Okay, so this works. Actually, what also works, this is interesting, I think, you can just say BMW. The way this is working is, this method is actually overloaded. So not overwritten, but overloaded, which means the method exists in several variations. There is one variation that is working on an object, and another variation that is actually working on a string. So here I have opened it up for you. You see, this is the code from the class that we're calling here, println with object and println with string. And this is why it's overloaded. And in both cases, no, here it calls string.valueOf and does something which, as you can see here, this is like the if. I think we have not talked about it yet. Anyway, you can think of this like a if. So if it's null, it'll print out null as a string. And if it's not null, it will call toString on the object, which is just like we did it before. And with a string, it will directly have the string. Okay, so let's go back to our test. So this is why we can just use it as it is, and we don't have to say toString, because the method itself will call toString for us. Again, avoid system.out.println, but also here applies my rule. Never have a general rule. There is always an exception to any rule, and here in my tutorial I think it's okayish if I use it, because in this tutorial I don't need performance. But in real world server code, you would usually do this with logging. Okay, so I have executed the test, and this printed now something weird. So it gave me the full-fledged name of my class, including its package. This is the full class name, and then some symbol, and then a weird number. Actually, this is hex code displayed as a string, and actually this represents the address where this object in memory was created. This is not very helpful to us. The problem is, for the general implementation of this method, for object, I mean, they wouldn't know of BMW because at the time they wrote it, they could not think about every object, every class that would ever be written in future. So this is just the general rule, which is not helpful, which is also the reason why very often you should really override the toString method in your objects. Well, actually, Josh Block in his book, he says you should consider doing it for every class. In this case, sorry, I disagree, because for example, for classes like a test or a service class, I mean, what would it help me to have a toString method on this test that I would never see, because I will never create myself an instance of this test. This is done by the testing framework JUnit for me. So I would rather say implement toString, or consider implementing toString for every entity. So an entity is usually a noun, like BMW, or name, color. For these, it very often makes sense to implement a toString method. Okay, but now I'm already talking too much again, sorry. Let's already do it and override the toString method so that it displays something more meaningful. Because my idea is I would want to see Markus, Biel and Silver in there somehow. For this, let's again start with a test. And let's assert with true that when I call BMW, or let me assign it to a variable to make it a bit nicer. By the way, you might have seen popping up this asString method, which I implemented. This is very similar to the toString method that we'll do. I just implemented it at the time as a asString method because at this time we didn't know about the toString method, and I want to keep my promise to not introduce you to stuff that I haven't talked about before. So string, let's call it BMW string equals to BMW toString. So the result of the method will be assigned to that string, and then we can operate on that. And I say contains. I want it to contain Markus, and I will assert various things. So let me copy that. Actually, by the way, I'm already violating a rule of clean coding for clean tests. It's generally advised to have only one assert per test. So also your test method should be short. But okay, I mean, in this case, I'm not really testing something. I focus on explaining you the toString method. Okay, because when I test strings that are returned from toString, my personal style is I would not test that the string is exactly as expected, because you know strings often change a bit, so I want a bit more flexibility in here. So I just test that these values are included, which I want to be included. Okay, but also now, what if this is null? This would give me an evil null pointer exception. So on top I will assert that this is not null. And if it's null, the test will directly fail. So I will not get an exception, but this test would break. No, assert not null, sorry. Okay, because you can assert both. But we want to make sure this is not null. Okay, so let's run the test now. Okay, and it's not working. This is how we should start. We have a red test. So we start with a red test. And it says assertion error, add should convert BMW to string, this position. This is at position 16. So it was not null. Of course, we saw the string contains something, but it does not contain Markus yet. And this is what we're going to implement now. Okay, so let me jump to the class. You can also do it by clicking on the class as you saw it. And then at the bottom, let me add this method, public string. It should return a string to string. Okay, so now, so that the first test succeeds, I could say Markus. Okay. Let's run the test again. So now it failed at position 17. So it seems Markus was correct. Now Biel is missing. Okay. Because by the way, this style is actually a very good style in programming. You can do pair programming, you know, you program with a colleague, two people together, and then one person would write the test and the second person would write the minimal code so that the test will run green. So in my case, that would be just writing Markus, Biel, silver. But actually, this is not what we want to test, because we want to test that whatever I put here in the constructor will work. So it seems like that the test is not really written in a good way. And this is the idea of this cooperating test-driven style, so that both the code and the test in the end will be of high quality. Well, I'm not doing this right now, I'm just playing around a bit, but just to give you an idea what you can do to improve your code co-working with your colleagues, because now if I would just do this, my test should be green, Markus, Biel, silver. But of course this is stupid to statically return such a string. Okay, because now it's green, yeah. So we would, for example, could make the test better to have like a for loop and then test several entities. For now, I don't want to do this because, yeah, still we want to focus on the toString method. But I wanted to show you how tests can be bad. Like here my test is just so bad that with this simple code, I can already make it green. But okay, let's make it properly anyway. So the idea is that often at the beginning you give the name of the class, and for this we can actually take the getClass method that we saw before. And on this, I mean this is still an object and not a method, we can now say getSimpleName or getName. GetName would be the class name including its package name. GetSimpleName will just be BMW in our case. Okay. So, I mean, we could in this case also have written BMW simply, but the good part of this is it's more dynamic. Like when we would rename the class to something else, it would directly be shown. And also I wanted to show you how to use the getClass getSimpleName, just to make use of it, so you get a bit of a feeling of this getClass method. Okay, so anyway, my class here has these two attributes, owner's name and color. Both actually are also again objects. Now you can do two things. One thing you could do is you could return a string exactly similar like my asString method, which directly accesses the values of the owner and the color. Well, not the attributes, this is encapsulated into methods, so this is still okay. The only problem is whenever we change our mind, like name could have new fields or less, this would not be reflected and could even break the code in here. So more flexible is if you again call toString on these objects. So I can say plus owner's name, which will then automatically call the toString method. I mean, I can also say toString, but if I say toString or just owner's name, this is both working. And of course, owner's name is just shorter. So I would of course still add some symbol that I know that the name of the owner has started here. So I would say, for example, I would add the bracket, the opening one. Now I would add the owner's name, and then I would again add a comma. With plus I concatenate the different strings. Now I would want to print the color. And for the color again, which is again also an object, I will also call the toString method. So all I have to say is now plus color. Plus, and now I want the string to end, so that, like for example, when you do logging, that you see where it starts and where it ends. And therefore I add the closing square bracket and the space at the end. Okay, so however, if we print it out now, this will call the toString method of name, and this will call the toString method of color, which again is not implemented yet. Well, let's have a look. So okay, well, the problem is I have put this here so we don't see it. We just see that the test broke at line 16 because yet it did not contain Marcus. So let's do it again so that we see something. Okay, so you see it printed out BMW and then the square bracket, then a space, and then the full-fledged name, and then again the @ and then again the position in the memory as a hex, unsigned hex actually. And the same for the color. Well, so what we have to do now, we have to again implement toString for name and to again implement toString for color, which we call recursive because we call it again. Okay, we will do this until we reach either a primitive or a string, because a primitive and a string, they will directly be converted to a string. Okay, so let's directly jump into name actually and add the toString method here too. toString. Okay, and then we will say return get class dot get simple name plus again the square brackets plus first name plus comma plus last name. Now this is really your personal decision. You could also, which some do, add here something like first name colon, so that you know what is coming is the first name. Also I should mention, I mean, you can choose what to use this toString method for. Theoretically, you could use it, for example, to print out something on the console or to print out something in a UI so that the user sees what the content of toString is. You can, on the other hand, decide to use it for debug information that will be printed in a log, for example, so that this contains some technical information. Well, I think generally it's used more for the technical aspect. This is also why it includes here the name of the class, so that when a programmer sees this, the programmer will understand what happened. And if you want to have a string that is used in a UI, I would personally recommend you to, for this purpose, write another method. For example, I did here name or last name, which in this case it returns first name plus last name, which of course, by the way, we could also use if we want directly in here. So we can also say we don't want the commas for first and last name, and we directly call the method name. This is also fine. So this is your personal style that you can choose on, how you want the method to print out the stuff, and even what you want it to print out. If you have it for debugging, it would usually make sense that you print out everything so that you really see the complete state of your object. But in another case, it might be enough that you just print out the first name. So this is up to you to decide. Okay, let me copy. No, let's not copy that, because copying is evil. So now for color, public string to string. Oh, by the way, I forgot to add the add overrides, which I told you to use. So we should directly do that. Also here, last time when I talked about clone, it's also missing. Always add them when you override a method, because this will help you to find bugs like now. This, well, it's still, I have to return something. And now you see it says it's not overriding something because the method is written in the wrong way. To string. And this is what saves us, how the override helps us. Okay. So now I want the color name to be printed, and actually in this case, also to show you a variation, I don't want the name of the class to be seen because I just want to see the color, silver in my case. Okay, what did I do? Well, for name I did it differently, so I might just as well remove this here and just have the class for the first BMW class as like a root class. Okay, so now name will only be first name space last name, because we call the name method. Okay, and color will just be silver. Okay, fine. So now I think we are pretty much complete. Here still the add override is missing, which we should add. And then again, let me add the space to make this more readable. And now let's test our test. Let's run it. And now we got what we wanted, but actually, not completely. This looks a bit awkward. There is one more square bracket. So let's check why this is here. Actually, two of them, and I don't want them. So let's remove those. Okay, but generally there is BMW, and we see Markus Biel and silver. So this is why the test is green now. It has Markus, Biel, and silver. Okay. So how did the brackets come? So this is the first bracket from BMW. This is the last one. And it seems like around the name we probably have... Yes, we have them here. So we should remove them. So actually all we need is just to call the function name. Okay. What is other plus? Now it should work. Let me close this and that and call it again. Yes, now it is like I wanted it. BMW, Markus Biel, server. Okay, and now for some variation, I also want to show you something else, which, watch what I'm doing, just don't do it yourself, because I'm now using auto code generation, and this is not so optimal, because when you handcraft your code will usually be much nicer, and you will also understand what you're doing much better. So I mean, sooner or later you will get in touch with auto-generated code anyway, so I prefer that I'll be the one showing you auto-generated code, because I warn you, only do it in like in special cases, because these IDEs, they're very smart usually. With just a few clicks, like in my case, I press Command and N. I have this box here, and I can say, generate me a toString. So this is quite smart. And now I can choose which elements should be included, like should color be included, should owner's name be included, or should both be included. And then I can even choose a template. We did it with a plus. And what I want to show you, which is interesting, is using a string builder. A string builder is a class, a helper class that was included as said here with Java 5. The idea of a string builder is to improve performance, because these pluses, when they're executed like this by the JVM, they can cost you a bit of performance, which is relevant if you have like a loop and you concatenate millions of strings. And even that is probably not correct, because with performance, always just don't say something just because you think so. You must test your assumptions, because in 99% of the cases your assumption will be wrong, because the compiler these days is so much more smarter. It will see something like a concat, and internally it might use a string builder without you knowing it. So it can be that something is perfectly performant. So usually I would go for the code that is the most readable, and then only optimize it if the performance is not sufficient. Okay, but I think it's a nice time to show you, to introduce you to the class string builder, and so this is why I want to use it now. Okay, so you see this is the auto-generated code. It also did the override. It made this the variable here final. This I don't like too much. This just means this just saves my variable here, because when it's final, I will not be able within the same method to say as b equals to null. But I mean, how stupid would I be to say here new string builder and then 4 lines later say this is null? It'll not save you from changing the object, so it's not helping a lot, and it's adding this, which adds a bit of complexity. I would personally not do it like this. Okay, then also I think SB is not a nice variable. I personally would always write things out so that you know what it is. So I would really prefer string builder, or just at least builder, because this is so much more readable than builder. And then also, while working on this, string builder is also a nice class to show you how you can chain method calls. Because whenever you call append, this will return you an object of type string builder. This is really cool programming style, because with this you can remove all the references, you can remove all the semicolons, and you can call this in just one line. And even this return you can all do in one line. Dot to string, and then we even remove the reference variable, and in one line we say new string builder dot append owner's name dot append owner's name variable dot append color, and so on. And I think it's still readable. Now the auto-generated code wrote BMW here. It just used the curly braces. So we could of course again change that so that in the end it'll look like exactly like we had done it before. I would also not write owner's name, because I think in this case it's just obvious that it's the owner's name. And well, we didn't write color, I think, but let's leave that as it is. But you see here also it does like we did. It'll call the toString of owner's name, and it will call the toString of color. So this will be actually then our implementation, because there we did not use the auto-generated code. There is still the curly brace. Okay, so we have slightly adjusted it. Okay, so in short, string builder can also be used to dynamically create a string without using the pluses. In some cases, the performance might be better, but you can't say for sure. You need testing. Never focus on performance unless you need it. So in your case, more or less, generally speaking, never. Performance these days for like web applications, generally speaking, is not so important. And if it is important, like your boss approaches you and tells you, ooh, our application is running too slow, we have 10,000 users concurrently using it and just can't cope with that amount, in this case, you can tweak it later on. But when your code is a clean, nice, readable code, tweaking it for a specific case will be really easy. At least easier than when your code is a mess to read because you overcomplicated everything because you thought this would be more performant. And then to touch it later on will be really difficult. So performance, think of it when needed. Okay, anyway. Let's just execute it. Okay, and you see it also worked, BMW, Markus Biel, comma, color equals to silver. Because I think I left this color from the auto-generated code. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. So that was the Tostring method and a short talk about performance. I hope you liked my episode and would be really happy if you give me a thumbs up on the video in the bottom right corner of the YouTube video. Then also you can subscribe to my YouTube channel as always and leave me a comment. Tell me what you liked, what you not liked, and tell me like what I could improve. Okay, thanks and see you next time.